What's going on, guys? Your man Unspoken Reviews back again with another video, guys. And today we just received the first official quote unquote trailer for Avengers Doomsday in terms of the X-Men trailer. All right, guys. So it was announced a little while ago that the X-Men would be in Avengers Doomsday, and not just any X-Men, but the Fox X-Men from the first 2000 movie we got back then with the cast of Hugh Jackman, James Marsden, Halle Berry, so on and so forth. And it seems that these characters, or at least some of those characters, will be making a return in Avengers Doomsday. Okay, now, when I first heard this news, I was a little back and forth about it. I really didn't know how to feel. I feel like the Fox X-Men have just reached their limit, in my opinion. Look, some of these characters have had fantastic send-offs. Some of them have not. We've seen a renewing of the Fox X-Men. And with the renewal of Fox X-Men that we got, I pretty much was digging that up until Age of Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. But I was really kind of hoping they either would start off new, but it would make sense to me that they would go back to the old guard, especially since that is the old guard that a lot of comic book fans are familiar with. Now, some comic book fans view the Fox movies as great. Some are kind of in the middle, and others kind of like, nah. Some people like when they rebooted that part and when it started off with the younger Charles Xavier and the younger Eric Lencher. Some people still love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Some people are past it. I'm personally past it myself. But it seems that these characters are still running around the MCU since we are all in the multiverse, and the multiverse is coming to a close with Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. So with this teaser trailer, we do once again get Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier and Ian McKellen as Eric Lencher, and I am kind of past seeing these two. So we do see the X-Men has reached a very destructive kind of position, which is not a surprise. Any fans of the X-Men or just a Marvel fan in general, man, this mansion is always getting destroyed. I mean, come on, let's just get it out the way. I mean, if you have ever opened up an X-Men comic, you read a couple issues and eventually the mansion will get destroyed. I've seen it happen in X-Men Legends. I've seen it happen in X-Men Legends 2. I've seen it happen in, I think it was Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I think it might have gotten destroyed. I've seen it happen in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. I've seen it happen in an X-Men animated series when it gets destroyed. It's happened in X-Men Evolution, Wolverine and the X-Men. Let's just get it out the way. This mansion does not stay standing for too long. Matter of fact, when they reboot the franchise, I'm going to count down to how long until it actually gets destroyed again. But the X-Mansion is always getting destroyed. As we know, the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters is kind of the home base for the X-Men. And of course, we know the X-Men are a group of mutants who work together to try to create stability between mutants and humans. And they fight to constantly preserve that idea of Charles Xavier. Xavier believes that humans and mutants can coexist together, while Eric Lencher, having dealt with a very terrible past, does actually believe that mutants are the next step in human evolution. He considers them Homo superior, which is beyond that of humans. And he's been back and forth. Sometimes he's willing to just wipe out humans. Other times he has tried to turn them into mutants. And other times he really just tries to create a very nice sanctuary for mutants to thrive in, which is Genosha. So he's had different kind of ways he's handled it over the years and throughout different types of media. But it seems that the two of them are here in the X-Mansion. We see that it has been somewhat destroyed. We see the plaque on the ground. And we do hear some small dialogue from Eric Lencher where he's saying, "It is not whether or not you're going to die, but who will you be when you close your eyes?" We do get to see Xavier and Eric kind of together. And this is not a surprise to me. The two of them have constantly put their differences aside whenever it's come to protecting mutants. This has happened so many times. Usually these two are pretty much enemies, but they are pretty much brothers at the same time. They've never really wanted to see each other hurt and have always tried to do what they can to help each other out whenever they deem it necessary. We see this in X-Men Apocalypse after, Eric's family's killed. Charles, even though he's upset at him or worried about him, he still worries for him and senses his pain and senses his loss and feels really bad for him. It doesn't change also in X-Men The Last Stand. After Charles Xavier is killed by the Dark Phoenix, there's a moment where John Pyro, part of the Brotherhood, makes a comment that he would have killed the professor if Eric had allowed him to. And I like when Eric stops him with this line.
Did more for mutants than you'll ever know. The single greatest regret is that he had to die for our dream to live.
It's a real deep scene as you realize that these two are not hated enemies that just want to see each other destroyed. No, they really do care about each other. They just have opposing views, much like the Martin Luther King and the Malcolm X. They both care about the success and the thriving of their people. They just have different methods of how they get there. However, whenever mutants have been threatened by some type of force like apocalypse, the two of them have had no problem setting aside their differences and doing what they could to stop the larger threat, which is something I've always loved about their characters. However, we do see these two are in the X-Mansion together, and it seems they may be nearing their last few moments. And we also get a short scene of James Marsden as Cyclops. Again, he seems to take off his visor and he lets off a huge optic blast, which I think is a pretty awesome scene. And if you look in the background, you see some Sentinels walking around. Now, I don't know if this is in context with the film or if this is a different type of if this is somewhere in the multiverse, because as I do understand it with this film, we're supposed to see an Avengers versus X-Men. Awesome comic. If you guys haven't read it, I highly advise you read it. It's a pretty awesome story. I actually listened to the graphic audio of it some years ago. Pretty awesome. It's not verbatim, what's in the comic, but it's still pretty good. All right, I loved it. But it seems that in this film, we are going to get an Avengers versus X-Men, where I do believe there's supposed to be a fight between Sam Wilson and Scott Summers. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go down. I think there's some other fight scenes between, I believe, Mr. Fantastic and Nightcrawler. Some of these fight scenes they're going to be pretty lit, and having these types of different abilities is going to be pretty awesome to see on screen. Now, I'm not exactly sure when that's supposed to take place in this movie, or what we're seeing here in this trailer is a different universe overall. Now, I will say I'm excited to see James Marsden in the actual Cyclops outfit, okay? I was not a big fan of the black leather. Okay, I even remember being as a kid back in the 2000s, and I was like, why are they wearing black leather outfits? Like, I was thinking that as a kid. I was like, why don't they have on the X-Men animated series outfits? Apparently, The Matrix was a big movie back then, and I guess they just kind of wanted to keep up with that certain type of aesthetic. I don't think they needed to do that. But back then, comic book movies weren't that powerful. I think the only other comic book movie that was up to standard like that was Blade. Outside of that, people didn't really believe in comic book movies like that. Over the years, things have kind of changed up. We've seen the Wolverine outfit in Deadpool and Wolverine. And it seems that now that Marvel has the rights over Fox, they're going to try to do a little bit more comic accurate stuff. And I really hope they do that with my boy, Scott Summers. Look, James Marsden as Scott Summers got so disrespected in the Fox movies. They have not done much with Scott since the moment the first X-Men movie came out in 2000. He was just put as the third wheel with his girl, with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I didn't understand that. He was just kind of treated like the no-nonsense guy that gets on everybody's nerves. And I did not see that at all. Scott is such an awesome character. He is so dedicated to the fight, which I always seen Cyclops as the middle child between Professor Xavier and Magneto. He's always come in that guy who believes in the dream that Xavier has, but he's willing to go where Eric is if he has to. And that's something that I've always loved. He's an amazing fighter, amazing tactician. I mean, this dude has plans on top of plans. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I think I saw in one comic where he's playing chess with Xavier, and he already knows what move he's going to make after that move and the move after that move. And I think that is so awesome to have a guy who's like that on your team as the leader. I've actually been listening to the X-Men audio drama. Let me tell you guys, I'm going to put the link in the video. If you guys have not listened to that, bro, it is awesome. I think they're on 4 seasons right now. Yo, I highly advise if any of you like listening to audio dramas or audio books, bro, I'll put the link in the description. Check it out. The guys are awesome with these. You guys can actually get them on any podcast like Amazon, but they're also on YouTube as well, okay? But Scott has always been that tactician. And I hated how he was treated in the X-Men movies. And not just the 2000 films, right? Also in the rebooted franchise part of it, with Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. And I hate how he's always just regulated as Jean's boyfriend. I want to see more from that character. And I'm glad that we're kind of getting the comic book accurate outfit. He looks pretty good. Interested in seeing, like, they didn't seem like they gave him the yellow trunks down below. I guess they kind of did not think it would work the same way it worked for Superman. Or this, like I said, this might just be one version of a universe we're seeing, and we might see a different version. Because I do believe I have seen some behind-the-scene photos of James Marsden in the Cyclops outfit. It happened a few months ago. I don't exactly remember where I've seen it before, but I do know there were some out there. And I do think he did have the yellow trunks on, so we might see 2 different versions of the X-Men. or we might just get a fight between the X-Men and the Avengers, and then the X-Men may stay behind and not help, or maybe send some of their members along to help against Doom. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't know, guys. I'm a little back and forth how I feel about this. I don't know if I'm super excited about this. I know I am happy to see the X-Men are finally going to be part of the MCU in some form or fashion. It just kind of annoys me a little bit that every time they try to do something like this, they take another step back to where the MCU started from, right? When Tobey Maguire showed up in No Way Home, now it seemed like the MCU started there. Now it seems that with the X-Men here, it seems like now the MCU may have started there, and so on and so forth. It's not that I don't think it's a good idea to bring these characters in. I just think they should have rebooted. I guess it's going to be kind of like a closing and, closing of the old guard, where they kind of bring back what's all coming to an end just so they can show everything that's coming that's new. And while I'm excited to see these guys kind of get their closing send off, I felt like that already happened, especially for Xavier. I felt like we had his great ending at the end of Logan. Then he came back for Multiverse of Madness, which was a whole different ending and which was less emotional than what we got in Logan. And now they're bringing him back again, which is probably going to be another emotional ending. Now, granted, I am glad to know that Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen love these characters so much that they keep coming back. That just lets you know how much they honor and respect the characters that they play. And that's something that I appreciate. I'm glad to see James Marsden come back. Even though I know he was kind of slighted as a character for Scott Summers, seeing him come back again lets you know that he probably really likes the character. And hopefully they give him some bomb-ass combat scenes. I definitely want to see that between him and, Sam Wilson. I really want to see those fights. I think that would be lit. However, I know I'm back and forth on this teaser, guys. And I know that we're getting we got a whole nother year before we see this film. I'm pretty sure by Super Bowl Sunday, we're probably going to get a full teaser trailer with everything all added in together. I don't know. I am glad that we're also going to get the Sentinels as well. The Sentinels is something that is always hinted at, kind of seen, but not all the way. We kind of got them in Days of Future Past. Then we kind of got them two ways in Days of Future Past. Then we kind of had them in X-Men Last Stand, just real quick. I do want to see the Sentinels. I do want it built up there, but I just kind of hope that, going forward, Marvel does justice by the X-Men. This is a group of characters, much like Fantastic Four, that need to be executed very well. I felt like Fantastic Four was done pretty well, and I think with the X-Men, people are going to be watching them like hawks with that. People are, especially comic book fans, are going to be going crazy if they mess that up. All right, guys, I've been Unspoken Reviews, and I will see you guys in the next one.